Welcome to Black History Matters 2024. This is the fourth installment of an educational series produced by the National Abolition Hall of Fame and Museum. These short educational videos are meant to provide an introduction to topics important to our understanding of Black American history, but also the larger history of the African diaspora across the Americas and the world. I'm pleased to welcome you to today's episode, I Have a Dream, the impact of the Civil Rights Movement in the United States. The Civil Rights era in the United States spanned from the late 1940s to the late 1960s and was characterized by efforts to end racial segregation and discrimination, particularly against African Americans. The era gained momentum with significant legal battles and grassroots movements. In 1954, the landmark Supreme Court case, Brown v. Board of Education, declared racial segregation in public schools unconstitutional, challenging the separate but equal doctrine established by Plessy v. Ferguson in 1896. While moments like Brown v. Board of Education were important for beginning the Civil Rights era, it is also important to remember the actual key figures who played important roles in defying white supremacy and whose memories still remain with us as vibrant examples of activism for us today. For example, Rosa Parks became an iconic figure in the civil rights movement when she refused to give up her seat to a white passenger on a segregated bus in Montgomery, Alabama in 1955. Her arrest led to the Montgomery Bus Boycott, a successful year-long protest against segregated public transportation organized by leaders like Martin Luther King Jr., who emerged as a prominent voice and perhaps the most recognizable voice, advocating for nonviolent resistance and civil disobedience. Groups of people also led the movement. In 1960, the sit-in movement began when 4 African American college students staged a sit-in at a segregated Woolworth's lunch counter in Greensboro, North Carolina. The tactic spread across the South, igniting a wave of similar protests challenging segregation policies in public spaces. The Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, also known as SNCC, formed in 1960, composed mainly of young activists committed to nonviolent direct action and civil rights organizing. All of these events culminated with landmark legislation such as the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which was a pivotal legislative achievement that outlawed discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. It was followed by the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which aimed to overcome legal barriers at the state and local levels that prevented African Americans from exercising their right to vote, particularly in the southern United States. However, while we have discussed important legislation and individuals who inspired the Civil Rights era, I think that it is also important to discuss some of the tragic events that occurred during this time period and thus are the flip side of the movement which, albeit was successful, had a heavy cost and was not easily won. The example of Emmett Till is one such case. Emmett Till was visiting Mississippi from Chicago in 1955. During his visit, he was accused of whistling at a white woman named Caroline Bryant. Afterward, Till was abducted, beaten, and shot, and his body was dumped in the Tallahatchie River. His mother, Mammy Till Mobley, insisted on an open casket funeral to show the world the brutality her son had endured. Roy Bryant, who was Caroline Bryant's husband, and J.W. Milam, 2 white men, were arrested and tried for Till's murder. Despite overwhelming evidence, including their own admissions in a magazine interview, an all-white jury acquitted Bryant and Milam. The trial, which attracted national attention, highlighted the deep-seated racism and injustice prevalent in the American South. The acquittal of Till's killers shocked the nation and galvanized the civil rights movement. Till's murder became a symbol of racial violence and injustice. The case also underscored the need for federal intervention to protect the civil rights of African Americans in the face of systemic racism and discrimination, especially in places like the southern United States. Another tragic example was the bombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama in 1963. The bombing killed 4 young girls and is another example of the violence and the deep-seated racism that many African Americans faced in the South. The bombing occurred specifically on September 15, 1963. 4 KKK members planted dynamite beneath the church, which was a central meeting place for civil rights activists. The explosion killed 4 young African American girls, Addie Mae Collins, Denise McNair, Carol Robertson, and Cynthia Wesley, and injured many others. The bombing shocked the nation and brought international attention to the violent resistance against desegregation and civil rights efforts in the South. The senseless deaths of innocent children sparked outrage and served as a catalyst for renewed commitment and determination within the civil rights movement. It was also part of the reason that prompted President LBJ to expedite the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which would, as we mentioned, outlaw segregation and discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. Other big moments, such as the assassination of prominent figures, like that of Martin Luther King Jr., who was killed in 1968, dealt a severe blow to the movement. But all of these tragedies also served to underscore that the struggle was succeeding in terms of shaking the status quo and bringing issues of racial equality to the forefront of national discourse. You have to remember that in the moment, people weren't sure whether or not they were going to succeed. But that individuals like Martin Luther King Jr., the activists at the 16th Street Baptist Church, and therefore the little girls, and Emmett Till were killed for defying to exist within the racially segregated world prescribed to them, and demonstrated that their mere existence was shaking white supremacy. Thus, the Civil Rights era, and the many people that labored and sacrificed and died for it, laid the groundwork for subsequent social and legislative changes, inspiring future generations to continue the fight against discrimination. Thank you for joining us today for this presentation on I Have a Dream, the impact of the civil rights movement in the United States. On your screen, you will see a link to a Google form. The link is also available in the video description and will take you to a survey where you can leave feedback about your experience with this video. Your feedback helps us plan for future events and to secure funding, so we'd really appreciate it if you could take a few minutes to fill that out. Once again, thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you at our next presentation.